Hi everyone, welcome to BIM Like a Boss episode 6, How to Build Better Revit Families with Unify. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. During our presentation today, we will cover advanced functionality in creating Revit families, the process of creating Revit families in bulk from data, requesting content on demand with Unify, and finally, we'll get to our live Q&A. If you have any questions that come out throughout the presentation about building better Revit families, please use the Q&A tool at the bottom of your Zoom window to ask. We will get to these at the end of our presentation. Without further ado, I'll turn the floor over to our host, Unify's very own BIM specialist, Jay Merlon, to get the presentation started. Jay, take it away.
All right, thanks, Laura. Okay, so as Laura mentioned, today I'll be sharing some of the more intermediate and advanced techniques that I've learned over the course of around 13 years of using Revit. And the first functionality that I'd like to share is the ability to drag an annotation symbol independent of the 3D geometry. Even though the annotation and the 3D geometry are in the same family, I have a technique here that I'll share which will allow you to position a symbol and leave the 3D geometry in its place. So here on the right, you can see this is a very common issue when you're dealing with electrical floor plans, because as you can see here in the 3D representation, this same group of families really should be spaced this far apart, maybe to be in between studs or what have you. So you can see here, obviously, on the floor plan view, they are overlapping as symbols. Okay, so this was not an issue back in the CAD days. Most of the time, drawings were diagrammatic in nature. So something like receptacles could actually be spaced out for legibility. So here in the BIM world, 3D geometry can never be diagrammatic because you can open yourself up for coordination issues. If you were to space these out so that they're actually legible, you can see here that the 3D geometry is actually moving along with it. So if a third party gets a hold of your model, they might assume that that spacing is actually part of the design when your intent was really just to make the drawing more legible. So let me go ahead and undo that. So as you can see, those families are not set up the way that I'm going to present, but these four actually are. So if I were to select this receptacle here, you'll notice that I am actually selecting this version of the 3D element. Now you'll see I have grips attached to this family, and I can actually begin to move that annotation symbol. The 3D geometry stays where it is. So as you can see here, there's the other duplex that's in the line, and I can continue to move these symbols so that they are legible. Okay, and again, the 3D geometry stays in place so that you are in line with any sort of coordination efforts that can happen. Okay, so now you're probably wondering how I got this to work. So let's go ahead and pop the hood on this family and see how it's done. So let me go ahead and edit the family. So this is actually an out-of-the-box Revit family. So you can see here, these are just extrusions, so nothing new there. Now, if I go to the reference level, still, on the surface, it looks like nothing new. We do have a nested annotation family here, but the big difference here is there is a reference plane that I had modeled in, and you'll see there in the tooltip that it says grip horizontal. So what I've done here is actually made this reference plane a weak reference, and then I've also taken the annotation symbol and constrained it to that reference plane. So in a nutshell, those two steps, I mean, there are a few more steps involved, but those two steps are really what contribute to allowing me to move that symbol using the grip. So when I go back to this view, you will see that we're actually moving the reference plane, not necessarily the symbol, because the symbol is constrained to that reference plane, and that's how I was able to get that to work. Okay, now going back to the family, there is one more additional parameter here that I've added. So you'll see here I've got the offset grip X. Now, why do I need that parameter? There's actually a couple of benefits to having that. So if I were to select these guys, you'll notice here I do have control over the offset as a value. So one use case for this parameter is I could switch it all to 0 in case I wanted to reset the offset. Okay, and then the second use case for that parameter, this offset symbol X parameter, is now I have the ability to give my designers a visual cue if this symbol was to move away from the 3D geometry. So you'll see that now that I've shifted that and offset it from the 3D geometry, it's actually turned red. And pretty simply, I was able to implement that just by creating a filter. So I have a filter that catches anything that has the offset as a change, and it will turn the element red. Okay, so I hope that this will be helpful for you all. As you can see, it only took a few tweaks to the Revit out of the box family to get this implemented, and I hope that does help solve some of your graphical issues that you might be running into, particularly when working with annotation symbols in Revit. Okay, so for the next piece of functionality I want to share, it's also lesser known, and it has to do with nested families. So there are several benefits to nested families. There are also a few caveats, but today I will demonstrate how you can use a nested family to generate different family types, each with their own complex geometry. So as you can see here, I have a single door family. Now you notice that this one's got the half round window above it, and I can switch the same, within the same family, I can switch the family type. And you can see that the geometry for that window changes quite a bit. That one you can probably control parametrically if you wanted to model that directly in the family. But when you start to get into different options such as louvers above the door, this could definitely become an issue with dealing with all of these extrusions within that family without using a nested family. So let's go ahead and open up this family and see how this works. Okay, so here, let's go ahead and look at the family types here within this family. Now, you'll notice here I have a parameter under construction called opening type, and then it says windows in brackets. So if I go to edit that parameter, one of the things that is special about this parameter is the type of parameter is a family type. So what that does is it allows me to, let me cancel this out, it allows me to assign a family that is loaded into this family. So it's a child family, if you will, or a nested family, and select that any one of these family types that are loaded into this family nested and associate that with a different family type. So if I switch these family types, you'll see now that that value has changed to a different nested family that I have in here, as well as the quarter round nested family. Okay, so let me go ahead and cancel this out. So how do I associate that parameter with this element? How does Revit know that this is the element that I want to switch using that parameter? So you'll notice here, if I were to select this, the frame, it is actually just an extrusion, you can tell because of these grips. But if I select a nested family here, now you'll notice that there is a label, and this is similar to what you might be used to when you see dimensions being assigned to parameters, except in this case, when I drop down the label menu, you can see that the only parameter I have the ability to assign to this nested family really is that, that parameter type that is a family type. So what I've done is I've assigned that parameter to this element that is placed in the model, and now as I switch through the different family types, Revit knows that that is the element that I would like to adjust based on a nested family. Okay, so you can imagine how difficult it would be, particularly, let me go back to the louvered family. You can imagine how difficult it would be to manage these as individual extrusions similar to this door frame. Within the family, you have to turn off visibility for every extrusion and control everything with parameters. In this case, we have one parameter that controls the nested family that is loaded in by type. Okay, so lastly, what I'll show you is how to work with type catalogs to generate several family types using data from within that a CSV or a comma separated value list. Okay, so let's go ahead. So first and foremost, Revit identifies text files as a type catalog if it has the same name as a family in the same folder. Okay, so you can't actually drag and drop this family into Revit, or it won't prompt you to, it won't prompt the type catalog window to pop up. So really, in Unify, we do handle this rather gracefully. You can actually see that this is a type catalog family because it has the TC badge on the preview image. And if I were to insert that family into Revit, you'll see that I have this nice interface to be able to select multiple family types. Okay, so let me back up a second and show you really what a type catalog looks like. So if I go back to my window here and open up this text file. So this looks pretty scary, unless you're a software developer or maybe someone that works with numbers quite a bit. But you know, this is essentially exactly what it's named after. It's a comma separated value list. So every comma you can consider a new column. But still, looking at this as plain text, extremely difficult to work with. So what I want to share with you today is basically how to work with this comma separated value list in Excel so that you have more of a tabular view and interface to work with. So what I'll do now is go ahead and open up Excel. Okay, so when I choose open here, you'll see that I actually am able to open a text file. So let's go ahead and open that. And now we've got an import wizard it's basically here to help me parse out this information, because you can see here in the preview below that it can't really understand how to break up these columns yet. So if I choose delimited and go next on the wizard, you can see here by default, it's the delimiter it's looking for tabs rather than commas. So here I would select comma, and now you can see in the preview that we do have all of the data parsed out properly into individual columns. Okay, and from here, let's go ahead and click Finish. And here is my type catalog in a nice, easy to read tabular structure in Excel. So now you can start to think about how easy it is to add several types to this type catalog. Maybe you have some complex formulas that help you generate these parameter values, whether it's geometry or it could be engineering data or any of that information. You now have the power of Excel and formulas within Excel to generate that information. And it's as easy as creating additional rows in the CSV to create additional family types. So here, from here, I would just hit save, and then it would save it as a text file. Let me go ahead and close that out. Oh, one thing to note here is you definitely don't want to have multiple type names. This first column is the type name of every one of these types. So just keep that in mind as you're watching this demo. Okay, so now that I've showed you how to edit a type catalog, really generating a type catalog is just as easy. So if I open up a family here, now that I'm in the family editor, I can go to the file menu, go to export, and then choose family types. So what this is going to do now is, you see here, it's actually generating a text file named after the family already for me. So you can see that Revit's already trying to associate that type catalog with this family. So I just click save there. Here's the text file that Revit generated for me. Now, if I open that up, you'll see here is all of the data. Again, very difficult to read, so I would follow the same steps that I just presented to open this up in Excel and begin to create your dozens and dozens of family types. And again, always looking at Unify to help us manage those types and type catalogs. Absolutely the way to go in terms of being able to insert several pieces, several different types from a type catalog. All right, so I hope that's helpful for all of you out there that is looking to generate dozens or hundreds of different family types without having to manually create each family type and input information there. All right, and the final piece of this webinar, I'm going to talk about content on demand. Okay, so this feature is not only for folks who don't necessarily have time to create Revit families, but maybe it's for those of you who are still learning how to create some of these more complex families and may need someone to help out. So here in Unify, we actually have a built-in workflow which allows you to generate a request for content. Now, this form actually is more than just a form. It really helps support the entire life cycle of a piece of content, which I'll explain and demonstrate here shortly. So here, we've got some pretty straightforward information here, such as project number and name. You can obviously assign a due date and a priority. Now, when you select libraries, you can, we do support multiple libraries for any piece of content, so you'll be able to select multiple libraries there. Now, when you go to choose a Revit file type, you can actually see that now I'm prompted to choose a minimum Revit year, which is extremely important when generating content, just to make sure that we're generating content in the compatible year. Some pretty straightforward information here, like the file name and instructions. You can also set your units and any special standards that you might need. Now, down here at the bottom is where, when I mentioned supporting the entire life cycle of a piece of content, you can actually drag and drop any supporting documentation to this content request. So that could be a cut sheet, maybe it's a 2D CAD file or a 3D CAD file, even a sketch that is scanned in and taken a photo of. You can attach all of that directly to this content request. And down here under notifications, within Unify, we do have a feature for user groups, and this will allow you to have these user groups notified of new content requests. So if I jump into a request that's already been submitted, I'll show you what that looks like as well, because there's some additional features here. So this is a request that's already been filled out and submitted. Now again, here are some of the design documents that have been attached to help support the creation of this content. But if you look down here, now that this content request is in the wild, I have the ability to have some of these discussions that really will help support the development of this content. So, these could be collaborative questions. Maybe there's missing information. Maybe there's additional data sheets needed. But now, again, going back to the life cycle of a piece of content, think about the discussions that happen around developing that piece of content. Think about the design documents that supported the development of this piece of content, and then the content itself. So you can see here the RFA, which is the family that's been completed and attached to this content request. It's an entire association between the family, the libraries, which it automatically gets added to once this is completed, the design documentation, and of course, again, any of the discussions. So again, think about how you may currently be handling requests such as this. I can almost guarantee that you have one system to hold your cut sheets and supporting documentations. Maybe it's in a folder somewhere. Discussions might happen over email or Microsoft Teams or Skype. Here, again, all of this is tied in together, and you can always revert and look back to the history of why this content was created the way that it was. Okay, and one more thing I'll note about the content on demand and the content requests is here at Unify, we do offer a content creation service. So part of this content request workflow is actually tied into how we develop content for our clients. So we typically refer to us as an extension to a design team, where your designers, again, if they don't have time to develop the content, or maybe the content is more complex and they fill this content request out, our team at Unify, the content creation team, will receive this content request, consume the information, have some of these discussions with your team to make sure that we understand how to develop this content. And again, once it's completed, we can attach it directly to the request, and then it gets added to your libraries automatically. Okay, so that actually wraps up the live demo portion of this, and it looks like we have quite a few questions coming in, so I'll go ahead and hand the floor back over to Laura to handle the Q&A session.
Thank you so much, Jay, for that informative presentation. As I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, you're welcome to use the Q&A tool at the bottom of your Zoom window to submit your questions for Jay. And it looks like we've already had some great ones come in, so I'll go ahead and get started on those. The first one we have for you, Jay. If I have a quote-unquote child family nested into several quote-unquote parent families in a project, will reloading a revised child family update all of the nested ones in the other families as well?
Great question. So the answer is yes. However, one detail that you should not overlook here is what I did was I opened this louver family. So this is actually the child family that I loaded into this door family. So that's this guy here. Now, what you need to make sure is that this is checked. So shared needs to be checked for you to be able to update a nested family within a parent family. And this is once this family has been loaded, this parent family has been loaded into a project, and this family is shared, the nested family is shared, then Revit will be able to update that family that is nested within the parent.
Great, thank you. Next question. How do I upload a family with a type catalog to Unify Core?
Oh, great question. Yeah. So here in Unify, we have this upload screen. So the key here with associating the type catalogs with the family is really to upload them within the same action. So here you can see I have the two files selected here in Windows, and if I were to just drag and drop both of those, really what you're only seeing the Revit family here, but in the background we've also added that text file and associated them. Associated that type catalog with this family, so that when you go to browse for the family that is associated with the type catalog, again, you're not really seeing the type catalog here, but we do associate it in the back end.
Okay, thank you. Next question. What happens when all of these nested families are set to shared status?
Right, so this is related to the previous question about updating a nested family. So that is, I guess that's something to watch out for. If this louver is shared, you need to be aware that when you re-upload a revised version of this nested family into a project, Revit will prompt you and to make sure that you want to overwrite it. So you do have the option, but just know that any family that is nested and shared will sort of be associated and tied together. So if you're trying to revise one nested family, the same is going to happen to all of the other nested families that are shared. Another thing to note actually about shared families too is in order to schedule this nested family, it will need to be shared as well.
Okay, great, thank you. And then it looks like we have a comment here. To clarify on the nested families, you can also drive that through a type of catalog, and the nested families don't even need to exist in the family as long as they exist in the project. So that was from our friend Adam Murray. Do you want to elaborate on that? Yeah, do you want to elaborate on that a little more?
Well, I'll be honest, Adam, that is something new for me. So I learned something today, so thank you for that. So I'm assuming maybe Adam, you and I can talk a bit offline about it, but again, like that's the first I've heard of that. So I'm assuming that you can maybe put in a plain text parameter or a value of the family name. Maybe Adam, you can comment back on the Q&A and see if that's exactly how it would work, and then we can share it with the rest of the listeners.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Adam's a great friend of ours in the panel we've had in the past, so thank you for that information, Adam. Another question.
And he just confirmed that's how it works.
Yep, perfect. Cool. So thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
Okay, another question. Can I upload just a new text file type catalog on its own to Unify and have it associate properly with an existing Revit family?
So that it won't necessarily work that way. And the reason being is because we can actually host text files in Unify. So if you were to upload just the text file, Unify would assume that you want to track that as content in a library. So really the only way to do that is to pair it with the family as I demoed earlier. That way, again, that text file doesn't necessarily appear in your library, but it is associated in the back end.
Okay, thank you for that. Next question. Can I view this entire webinar again? I'll answer that one for you. Yes, absolutely. We will be sending out a recording to this webinar afterwards. I know it's a lot of information in a short amount of time, so this will definitely be sent the email you used to register for the webinar, so you can go through it afterwards. Then the next question we have, do you have further training resources for creating families with parameters? Oh, excuse me, parametric parameters.
Parametric parameters, yes. So at Unify, I don't believe we have very much in terms of resources on creating those parameters. I would like to possibly create a blog post or so, maybe a series of blogs that would address the usage of parameters and different ways that you can use them. Now, currently, we don't have anything on our Knowledge Center that is in a tutorial form and such. But again, I think that it's a good idea for a blog series. So maybe Laura, you and I can work on that one.
Yeah, definitely. And I just want to add to that, if you subscribe to our blog, if you go to our website, unifylabs.com, scroll to the bottom, there's a button to subscribe to our blog. With each blog post that we send out, there's an opportunity to reply. Any BIM related topic that you want us to cover, you can just reply to that email and we will definitely cover it. It's important for us to cover things that you're interested in. So thanks for that suggestion, and we will definitely look to provide that moving forward. Then also, Adam, I wanted to revert back to your question. You can also request a feature for Unify. So if there's something that you think would be a good idea, I will send you the information to request a feature. And as we push out our updates, we will definitely consider that. So thank you for covering that feature that you'd like to have covered. I'm going to go ahead and hop to the next question here. How does Unify determine what category a family belongs to? Sometimes it will roof, others it will be roofs, for example.
Right, that's a great question there. So really it is by model category, and I have seen that issue as well. There is a roof and then a roofs category. I would ask what version of Unify you are using, but really that it really should be a single category, because we do categorize, we basically, when you're looking at this, so this is an example of a library, we group everything by model category or file extension if it's not a Revit family. So you may have identified a bug there that we can definitely look into. But really, yeah, again, to just answer the question, we group everything by model category, as you can see here on my screen.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And then someone just put in the chat here, it's unifylabs.com, not Unify. Yes, we do want to clarify our website is unifylabs.com. I'm not sure if I misspoke on that, but yes, that's where you will reach out to and find more information on the blogs and all that good stuff. Okay, so it looks like we're getting to the end of our half hour here. So I wanted to thank our audience so much for engaging with us and asking those great questions. As I mentioned during the Q&A, we will be sending out this recording to all of you who joined us later on. And again, thank you so much for joining us. We are going to keep the topic of building better Revit families going with our Industry Insights webinar coming up at the end of this month. That will be on Wednesday, February 27th at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And Nancy McClure from Interior Architects will be joining us to provide her insight on better BIM content. And that's all we have for you today. Thank you so much for joining us. Happy Valentine's Day, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.